Multiple Toronto Raptors draft workouts have been leaked, and we can see who Masai Ujiri is scouting and taking a look at. Obviously, Zach Edey's the headliner, but there are a couple other Canadian prospects that aren't projected to go in the range of where the Raptors are selecting, but are certainly going to be looked at as potential undrafted free agents for this Toronto Raptors team. As Masai Ujiri, Bobby Webster always like to find that needle in a haystack, and as of late seem to be more interested in drafting some Canadian guys. So we'll take a look at who the Toronto Raptors have been working out, seeing if there's some sneaky players that could have an impact on this Toronto Raptors team, could potentially get drafted, and obviously what everyone's sort of taking a look at, the big storyline heading into the NBA draft, whether or not the Raptors are going to end up drafting Zach Edey, because he's obviously a guy that's the biggest player in the NBA draft, not necessarily the best, biggest name, whatever like that, but what he did in the college run, what he's sort of been able to do, even for Team Canada and stuff, build up his reputation, do some things. Regardless of if you like him or not, he is someone everyone's going to be watching to see where he's going to end up getting selected in the NBA draft. So let's just dive into it, because news essentially came out that the Raptors worked out 5 different players, and Keon Brooks Jr., a 6'7" sort of forward out of Washington, Zach Edey, obviously 7'4" star from Purdue. Will that translate in the NBA? Who knows, but was certainly one of the best basketball players in college. Joseph Girard the third out of Clemson, a 6'2" guard, and then couple Canadians. Immanuel Miller, who's 6'7", played for TCU last season, is a forward. We'll talk about his stats as well. And Tyrese Samuel, a forward that's 6'10" out of Florida. Transferred to Florida last season, is an interesting player that I've looked at for a little while. Kind of a little, I don't want to say a stretch big given his percentages, but a long, wiry guy that can block some shots. We'll discuss him. And Jameer Young, who's a guard that's 6'1" out of Maryland in the U.S. So not really anything specific in regards to trends from these players. I mean, we have a 6'1" guard and we have a 7'4" center. There is not a particular archetype that was looked at with this sort of group of players that are working out for the Toronto Raptors, I believe today as of recording. So maybe some news will come out specifically about Zach Edey and how they're getting worked out, because it's interesting that all of these names ended up getting released to the public. Because again, as I sort of mentioned in the intro, the Raptors like to hold their cards close to their chest in terms of who they're working out, because it just sort of loses them some leverage if they want to make some moves, make some adjustments where they're drafting or anything along those lines. If it leaks out to the public, the types of players that they are actually, bringing in for working out. Now, it makes sense given this list that this is the specific list that would get worked out, because obviously 3 Canadians are on that list. And, Canadian fans like myself like seeing Toronto Raptors at least take a look, at least give the opportunity, some Canadian guys, some local talent to potentially come in and actually make the roster. But who are these guys? Who's going on? And obviously, we've been talking about Zach Edey a ton, but last season, again, I'll bring up his stats again: 25 points per game, 12.2 rebounds, 2 assists, and 62% from the field. Zach Edey is a guy that dominated college basketball, but the question marks about him is, how will his game actually translate into the NBA? Because obviously he's a player that can score in the paint. NBA level ready skill. He's going to be able to score, dominate around the basket. I don't think anyone questions his ability to do that. However, will he be able to be not a liability on the defensive end? They run him in the pick and roll. If he gets switched on to someone, is he just going to be an automatic bucket for another team that's just unplayable in the fourth quarter of games? That's a question mark that some people have. Will he be able to space the floor in terms of not just being a complete sort of guy that blocks the lanes, clogs up the offense for whatever team ends up selecting him? Will that sort of work out? I don't think that's as much of a worry as some people are making out to be. One, we've seen him improve his jump shot. That's an exciting thing people have been talking about at the draft combine. But 2, I mean, even if he's in there, the help side, they sort of help as you make that drive, you get that paint touch, you can just lob it up to him, even though he's not going to be probably a guy with a 30-inch vert that's slamming things down right away, but he can catch high, keep the ball high, and finish at the basket. And that's going to keep him from, really just completely halting the offense when he's at the point. But some teams might want to play faster and stuff. But where's he projected to go? Because right now, in terms of the latest NBA drafts, obviously Zach Edey being Canadian stuff, the Raptors are targeted, or this is the most latest mock draft I've seen from CBS Sports. We're projected to land Kel'el Ware, who we've recently worked out as well. Again, a bit more mobile, shot blocking, bouncy center, but questions about his work ethic in high school have brought up, and hurt his draft stock, I believe, but does have a jump shot, does provide some things out there, is also young himself. And Zach Edey is projected to go 23rd overall here now at this point in the latest mock draft. So if the Raptors are going to land Zach Edey, I don't think there's a realistic chance he goes, he falls all the way to the number 31 selection where we have, our second pick in this year's NBA draft. I don't think there's a chance he lands at that point. If Masai Ujiri is going to select Zach Edey, then I think it's going to have to be with the 19th overall selection. And again, I'm not one of those Zach Edey haters that's going to come out and be like, yo, that's a major L if we select him at 19. Obviously, there's some interesting prospects, some interesting players we've been covering, over the past few weeks that I would also be happy with. And, you could make a debate about who'd rather have, Zach Edey or Ware, or Carter, whoever the heck, is available at that 19th pick. But obviously, Zach Edey, I'm cool with that big name, that excitement sort of coming into the roster. So, we'll see if he ends up getting selected. Obviously, he's working out for the team, but that wasn't the only Canadian that Masai Ujiri took a look at in terms of giving an opportunity, giving a little look for, because obviously we can take a look at the list here again, bring that up. Immanuel Miller is a guy that is a little wing scorer that I think, obviously is not going to go in the 19th or 31 overall selection, but as an undrafted free agent, looking at his highlights and stuff, is a pretty interesting piece. So Immanuel Miller played for TCU last season, and looking at his stats, is a guy that was it's a pretty intriguing type of player. I mean, in his final season, averaged 16 points per game, 2.6 assists, 6 rebounds, but shot 38% behind the three-point line. As an athlete, so gets a steal a game. He's just a solid sort of wing player. He's 23 years old, so he's not super young in terms of a prospect, was a senior. So we know Masai Ujiri hasn't hesitated in taking selecting older draft picks, especially with later round selections, especially with undrafted free agents. But Miller is a guy that's an interesting sort of piece in terms of floor spacing, on the wing, can provide some value as Canadian as well. So he's an interesting piece, but the guy that I think is even more intriguing is Tyrese Samuel, who is also an older prospect, but had an interesting route over the course of his playing career in terms of what he was doing. I mean, he bounced around and played his first 4 seasons at Seton Hill and didn't get a ton of opportunities, didn't get a ton of minutes and stuff. His final season did do solid there, but played for Florida for his final season, and his stats really were solid. I mean, 14 points per game, 7.4 rebounds, 2 assists per night, which is solid for a big, but 1.1 blocks, 1.1 steals, is a solid defender. His three-point shooting did regress over the course of his college career, so that is something to take a look at. That is something you might be concerned about for a guy that is, looking at his, we bring up the official height, 6'10". I've seen him listed at 6'11". That's where the confusion is coming from, but, not the tallest guy, but has shown an ability to shoot in the past. I mean, in his rookie season, not a huge sample size. Did shoot 32%, 33%, but obviously taking 0.7 a game and then making 16% of your threes. That jump shot has regressed there, but is an athletic, bouncy sort of forward that he's just an interesting player, and the advanced stats love him. His advanced stats have been pretty solid there over the course of his college career. His box plus minus was 7.6 in college. Offensively, he's providing even more value as well for a guy that's kind of bouncy, athletic, and stuff like that. So that's cool. Had a ton of win shares in a solid sort of college team. I mean, just an interesting player. Again, neither of these guys are going to get actually drafted, by the Toronto Raptors 19th or 31st overall pick. I don't imagine. But as undrafted free agents, as potential prospects from the 905 that can develop and stuff, I definitely think they're cool players to keep a look at and obviously to root for, obviously being Canadian. But let me know what you guys think about all this Toronto Raptors draft news. You guys best make it as far. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. I'm signing out. Cheers.